Good day to you. My name is Walt. I'm talking about comics. Thank you very much for watching and for tuning in to this installment of single issue reviews. I have a lot of books, not a lot of good ones, unfortunately. There are a few letdowns in here, some catching up that I did on one fantastic series, and a truly heartbreak moment for me. All of this coming up right now. Alright, we'll start with Marvel Comics. It's only 5 books, 6. Marvel Comics had their Fresh Start initiative with a lot of really good books, which I was very fond of. I got really excited about. But this month or this week's releases were kind of like transitional issues and not directly filler issues. They're not en vogue anymore, but there are those issues in an arc where not much is happening. A lot of stuff is explained, and yeah, it's the case with a few of those, but not with this one. It's a Spectacular Spider-Man Annual #1. Well, #1 in the, I don't know, 5th volume of the whole thing, and it's written by Chip Zdarsky, like the regular series, and it's drawn by Mike Allred. Most of you will know him. He had recently a very successful and really cool run on the Silver Surfer with Dan Slott. But this here, I don't know, he's just not my favorite Spider artist, I guess. The story is really fun. It's about J. Jonah Jameson and about the fact that it's basically an origin story of his, and how his relationship towards Spider-Man changed over the years. And it's also a story on publishing and how it's not working anymore. So, this is what Zdarsky does really well. He connects those old tropes of Marvel with a very modern everyday life, a very current vibe always in those books, and it's very enjoyable, and I liked it. Like I said, not my favorite Spider-Man artist, but it's a fun book. I got it a little bit cheaper, so yeah, it was cool. It's a decent read. Next up, another Zdarsky book. He's doing a lot of work for Marvel right now, and he's, I think, one of the strongest Marvel authors of the moment. This one is Marvel 2-in-1. It's the last book featuring members of the Fantastic Four before the big relaunch is coming next week. I can't wait for it. And yeah, they're still looking for the missing 2 members, and we're still in this parallel dimension where a Spider-Man-ish person is the dictator of this world. But this here is only a story about the friendship between Ben and Johnny, and there are a few really emotional moments in here. It's very well written. I liked it a lot, except for the art. I think it's not acceptable for such a big Marvel book. It's by Ramon Perez. I have to name him because, I mean, why shouldn't I? I name good artists, so I have to also name artists who I don't like. And I don't know, this looked very digital. The coloring was also not helping, but anatomy and framing and just the storytelling, it wasn't great. And if the story is hitting all the marks or all the emotional marks, but you're still more focused on I don't like this art, then it's probably a series I can continue reading. I have to check if this artist stays on board. If so, I'm out. Next up, Venom by Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman. And this is, when I read this, I had like this Spawn feeling all over again. It's probably also because of the color palette. It feels super Spawny. And this one here was, I would say, the weakest of the 4 issues that were released. Donny Cates is still very much creating this big mythology around the origin of Venom, and it's decent. But I think it was just the way it was told through a narrator who's telling all these things to Venom here, to Eddie Brock. So it's basically like one guy dumping a lot of information on another guy, and yeah, it had something of a fanfiction touch, you know, when and this is where when it gets more like it's not a plot driven thing, but it's more about like storytelling and using prose to tell something. You can see that Donny Cates is not a writer, a classical writer. He didn't read a lot of novels or anything. He's more of a comic guy, a comic writer. He can tell stuff through action, through movement, through pacing and everything. And this is where he excels at. He's not very good at those more like prose moments. And yeah, I wasn't a fan of this issue, but I will continue reading it. It had a great start. Multiple Men #2. It's one of 2 Rosenberg books that I got. Matthew Rosenberg is writing a few books for Marvel right now, more and more mutant books. And yes, I was a big fan of Madrox and X Factor by Peter David back in the day, and the first issue was a very pleasant surprise. It was a lot of fun. This here is another take, and they're also going into this alternate universe kind of thing. Everything is exiles / what if nowadays with Marvel. So nothing is happening in the proper universe anymore. They're all going to different versions of the universe. And here we also have like a group of Marvel characters who are all multiple men, who are all like Madrox, but also Hulk and Deadpool and everything. So it's this endless versions of the same characters. I really can take this no more, I have to say. And it wasn't very funny, so I'll drop this. Next up, Astonishing X-Men. It's a fun book. It's still a fun book. It features Havoc. It features Havoc in his classic costume, so it's hard for me not to love it. I love Havoc, and it's a fun story. He's assembling his own team, and it's a very witty and, you know, kind of a loser team of X-Men, guys who were like Dazzler, who were like out of the focus for quite a time, and or Colossus, who's heartbroken because Kitty didn't marry him. So yeah, it's a bunch of losers trying to get back into action. So yeah, you always root for the underdogs, and this is the underdogs X-Men team right now, and it's cool. The Immortal Hulk #4, it's still very good, but if you start your comic with a citation by Jean-Paul Sartre, I expect a little bit more from you. Having said that, yeah, it was fun, it was okay. It's getting more and more, it's becoming more and more of a horizontal narrative. Until now, every issue was for itself, and now it's getting more fleshed out as a grander story, and it's about this lady here. She's a reporter, and she tries to find Bruce Banner. She tries to break the story that Bruce Banner is still alive, and Walter Kamkowski, I think is his name, Mr. Sasquatch from Alpha Flight. He's coming to help her, and then stuff happens. I didn't really get why it has to happen, but well, Mr. Sasquatch kind of loses control of his power, and towards the end, a big fight is hinted at. And I think it's cool because, you know, we need to have a big smashing Hulk in issue 5, and yeah, I think it will be fun. So that was the Marvel stash. Now we move to the indies, and I had quite a lot of indies this time, and some really good ones too. So this was much more fulfilling. Let's start with RoboCop, which I've talked about a few times already, so I will just say that it continues to be really good. It's written by Brian Wood with art by Paul Coelho and coloring by Doug Garbark, and it's really, really good. It's a great book. If you haven't followed it, be sure to remember to get it in trade. It's worth your money. Next is by Aftershock Comics, Her Infernal Descent. It's written by Lonnie Nadler and Zach Thompson and drawn by Kyle Charles. It's basically a Dante's Divine Comedy done in reinterpretation in a comic format mixed with well, a little story of their own, but it's really very much relying on your knowledge of the how this inferno in Dante's book is built up in circles, and that you have to travel through the circles, and I have read some version of it back in the day because I could remember some aspects, but I couldn't really get into it. A lot of famous people are turning up. It's about this woman who wants to find her family in the Inferno, and William Blake, the British poet, is her, how do you call this? He leads her through the Inferno, and she meets like Kafka and this guy and that guy, and they all say their lines, and then she moves on. So the first issue was really nice, but those ones were like a bit dragging, a bit boring, but I will stay with it. 2 more issues to go, and maybe in its totality it will work much better than as single issue installations. Next up, Resident Alien. I finished the miniseries. I haven't read Resident Alien in the past. I could totally follow the story. It's about an alien who lives incognito on Earth as a doctor, and nobody can see that he's looking like an alien except for a small girl, but it wasn't explored in this miniseries at all, that he's in danger to be discovered all the time, and he sees a graffiti on some wall, and this graffito is in this alien language, and he makes contact to the telephone number that is written in this alien language to connect with another alien, and then stuff happens. I won't spoil it for you, but it was really fun. I really liked the storytelling. I loved the art. Everything is very chilled, very laid back, very believable. It's in a way, it features an alien, but it's hyper realistic and very much relatable for everyone. Like this alien has a lot of issues. He doesn't like flying, for example, and he has panic attacks. I mean, who can't relate to that? It's really cool. I have to get the first trades. I have to catch up on this because I think it's fantastic. Next up is Harbinger Wars 2, number 3. And so it's Valiant's big summer event, which I don't know. I have a feeling that, I mean, it started out nicely, especially the prologue was really good, but the main series, you know, it's this whole Civil War thing again and again, like every publisher is doing it. Some heroes of the Valiant universe are siding with the government, and some want to stay renegades, and then they fight. Yes, that's the whole story, and yeah, it's well done. It's okay, I guess, but I don't know why it was teased like this big thing, and it's not. The only interesting thing is that all of Valiant's heroes are showing up. That's it. The story itself, well, it's kind of meh. Next up, the Weathermen #2. So now we're getting, when I first heard about the Weathermen, I was like, it's probably something, it has to do something with the Weathermen, you know, the terrorist group, which was active in the, I think, late 60s and early 70s. I'm not an expert on them, but I know they existed. They did some, they were responsible for some explosions, and they also killed a few people, very left-wing extremists from the 60s. And well, now we're getting there. It truly is about a terrorist group in the future, because it's a sci-fi. A terrorist group is helping the aliens to wipe out humanity, or a large part of humanity. And our man, who's also a Weatherman, haha, is part of this conspiracy. I won't spoil for you in how and whatever. I will just say that I wasn't really sold on the art in the beginning, but now I'm loving it. And it's a very fast-paced story with a lot of twists and turns, and it always stays. It's not hard to follow at all. It's complex but not hard to follow, and yeah, it's the perfect comic. It's really good, and I enjoy it very much, and it's recommended. Next up, well, I have a few good books here. I don't know why I felt like this was a drag, because this one was also very good. The Seeds. It's written by Innocenti and drawn by David Aja. You will notice that David Aja's name is put first here because Innocenti is not a big draw anymore. If you don't know her, she used to be, she followed Frank Miller's run on Daredevil a very long time ago in the 80s, and I remember really liking it back then. I haven't reread it. I don't know how it holds up. I also have fond memories of her Kid Eternity over at Vertigo Comics. 16 issues, maxi series from the early days of Vertigo. And here, she goes back to this thing where she's an excellent writer, because since then I've read some really atrocious mainstream comics by her, but here she's really good. This is very much a major reader's book. The language, the whole the whole way she's telling the story, it's not easy to grasp. It's a future, a dystopian future where there is a zone where people live who don't want to have anything to do with technology, and there is something about those things here, bees. You know, if you come to me with bees and bee-related stories, I'm always like, no, thank you. This is why I didn't originally order it, but then I saw it in the shop, and the art by David Aja is fantastic. So I thought, okay, it's just $4, but then I was really hooked by the story. It's not really clear where this is going. Only that, like I told you, it's set in the future. It's a very noirish, gritty book. A great dialogue, great characterization, and super promising first issue. I really liked it. Next up is Long Lost Part 2, #1. It's a second volume of Scout Comics indie series by Matthew Ehrman and artist Lisa Sterle, and it's as crazy and dark and weird as the first one, which is a great thing, because I loved the first one. And if you haven't checked it out, you can jump right into it. It's no problem. I don't think there will be like a big resolution of everything, and in the end we will understand what it is about. And I don't care about it. You just have to let go, because this is going, every few pages it's going in another direction, and it's a lot of fun. It's super surprising, very eerie. And the art is very simple, simplest at times, but still very effective, and I love it. It's a great series. If it has something of Rachel Rising, probably also because it's about two girls, and it always reminds me of what's his name, the guy who did Rachel Rising, Terry Moore. Yes, Strangers in Paradise. Yes, that's it. So yeah, it has a Strangers in Paradise vibe, but very, very, very dark and weird and cool. I love it. Next up, another book that was a super pleasant surprise is Psychoko. It's a book by Alternate Comics, you know, those books for $1.50. It's by Rob Feldman. He's the writer and the artist. And it's a super fun retro kind of book with this guy here, who's the most famous superhero in his world. His name is Psycho, by the way, and he's a fun character. The dialogues are super fun. It's not very serious. It's more like a pastiche of old school superheroes, but done really well. You know, I read a few of those, Batman 66 and all those things, and it didn't really click with me, but this clicked. It was super funny, and it's $1.50. You have to buy it. It's 27 pages of old school superhero fun, done well, and congrats to Alternate Comics. They're really getting somewhere with those very, creators who come out of nothing and do really cool books. Perfect. All right, next up is DC Comics, and I will start with what has become one of the biggest letdowns for me. I take it somehow personally as Shape the Changing Woman. It started as Shape the Changing Girl, part of the Young Animal Initiative, I think almost 2 years ago now. And I loved the first issues of this series. The first volume was really fantastic. Even the second one I still enjoyed very much. But now this whole Shape the Changing Woman thing, the third volume, so to say, or the third story act, it never went anywhere, and it wasn't even able to pick up all the things that got introduced in this reinterpretation of the Shade myth, and to somehow weave it into an interesting narrative. I don't know what went wrong here. This one reads like just like the editor tells you have to wrap it up in 2 issues, go, and you're like, you know what, I introduced so many cool things, and I will just show you that they're all so cool that you can just show all of them and make it work. I will just show you that. I mean, I could leave some things aside and focus on a narrative and make it emotionally relevant, but no, I will just show you how I can't do it. And she proved that she can do it. And not only that, but to use the last issue, like 1/3 of it or 1/4 of it, so you have left only a very small amount of time and pages to finish your own story. But what you do is getting back at the old Shade, the Peter Milligan Shade, who becomes something of an antagonist in the last issue, and it very much read like a commentary on the previous series, which went on for 70 issues, and which I remember crying when reading it and whatever, and it reads like, you know what, it wasn't relevant at all. And this character that you cared about like for 70 issues in this previous volume, he's a dick. And those women that he hang out with, they always hated him. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing here? Why are you destroying my favorite character in all Vertigo comics? For what reason are you doing this? And maybe I misread it. Maybe I just don't get it. Please, if you follow this book, and if you have a different interpretation of what is happening here, please put it in the comments, because I was desperate. you know, this is the comic that I wrote to the creators to because I loved it so much. I was thinking about buying original art, even if I don't have the money. This would have been like one of the first original art pages that I wanted to buy. And now this feels like a big fuck you to all the fans of the old Shade, and like a, I don't know, somehow misguided feminist commentary of what went on in the previous volume like 20 years ago. And I'm like, come on, man, you know, this is why Comicsgate is happening, really. You know, I went into this, bought all the changes. I was like, I don't care if you just tell me a story, I will love it. And I loved it, but it's not enough. You have to, you know, fuck this guy who was the inheritor of the Shade power like 25 years ago. Yeah, he was a dick. I don't get it. I don't get it. It's really stupid and it's sad. This is not how you treat, even if you don't like the story or you think it's a stupid story. It kind of feel, it's so disrespectful toward another creator. I mean, imagine now the next guy coming on board and basically bitching about all the characters in this book being dicks. You know? So you invested a lot of love and passion into them, but the next guy comes and says, well, they were all dicks. Really. So yeah, I don't know. This was... I'm sorry. I normally don't get that emotional, but you know that I really love this book and I don't understand what has become of it. It's really weird. Alright, so yeah. If you have another interpretation for me, please let me know. Maybe I'm just stupid, or my English is not good enough and I missed a lot of hints in this last installment of this book. I don't know. I must have missed something. Batman White Knight, with all the Batman wedding and everything, and me being a little bit out of comics for a few months, I kind of forgot to finish this, and it was pretty good. In the middle of it, I thought, wow, this can become really excellent, and the art is incredible. This will go down as one of the best looking Batman books ever, and I'm pretty sure we will have an oversized edition sometime soon. I think Mr. Murphy said something on his Twitter about an uncensored, edition of it coming up for next year. So maybe you will want to wait for that. If you haven't checked it out, this is really, really good stuff. The only problem that I had was that, well, it didn't stick the landing as perfectly. Very interesting subplots were introduced, maybe too many, and he managed to pull it off in the end. Everything was resolved, but the emotional landing wasn't as strong. It didn't have like this emotional punch that it deserved. But well, it's nitpicking. I think it was a very, very successful Batman story. Probably my favorite one in a long time. But I will talk about Batman in a second. In between the last issue of the very, very long arc on Aquaman, where he's fighting this bad guy. It's a Kingslayer, and he's fighting this bad guy. And it's basically really just one fight sequence, the whole issue, and then Mara comes in and saves the day, you know. But, you know, I really love the art here again. And I think I'm fine with Aquaman for now. I really enjoyed those issues for the art. And it was a fun story. And there is a cool cliffhanger at the end. So if you enjoyed, keep reading it. I won't tell you not to do it. It's just not super exciting that I have to continue it, and I have to cut down on a few books because I buy too many. Next up, Justice League Dark. It's by Scott Snyder. No, almost. James Tynion the fourth. I'm sorry, and yeah, but he learned his craft from Scott Snyder, and I don't want to bitch about it, but yeah, he's also very wordy. Oh my god, look at those pages. Way too many panels. Way too much text. And he's not really good at telling it through. You know, it's also a bit static, you know, they're always like standing around talking again. Having said that, it's a fun book. It's not bad at all. Wonder Woman is assembling a team because magic isn't working anymore, and they have to fight someone. But look at this. This is not pretty comic reading and making. It's kind of messy, and yeah, not a fan. Also, as beautiful as this Batman issue was by Tom King and Lee Weeks, who has just like become one of my top 5 artists in the industry, only by those 2 issues alone. He's so fantastic. On the Batman annual, he was already super fantastic, and he proves that he's one of the most exciting noirish artists in the business right now. I loved it. The colors by Elizabeth Breitweiser were also excellent. I love this team. Even Tom King was decent, but well, it was a lot of... So it's jury duty. They have to decide. Bruce Wayne is on jury, and they have to decide if Mr. Freeze did it or didn't do it. He confessed to it because Batman, almost killed him. And now Bruce Wayne wants to somehow, correct his wrongdoings as Batman. But not much is happening here. The storytelling is decent, but it's just not very interesting. And it feels calculated. Again, it's my old problem with Tom King. It doesn't flow naturally. It's too stylized. It's not like Detective Comics by Brian Hill, which was excellent. Number 985. Batman is fighting a new villain. One who's super brutal, and he's pulling all the strings, and he wants to really get to Batman, and he knows how to do it, and he's very good at it, and the storyteller is very good at showing us how to get to Batman, and it's fantastic. It's very organic, it's super emotional, great characters, the art is decent. Not always great, but it's fun, it's fine, it's okay, but well, the story is told so well, and yeah, it's excellent. It's an excellent story. Detective Comics, definitely one of my top 3 of the week, or of the 2 weeks, together also with Action Comics, which was also very, very good. It's Brian Bendis' first Action Comics. And yeah, this felt like a real #1. I told you that the other Superman series that kicked off was my cup of tea, but this one was really cool. It's kind of similar now that I think of it. There is a new villain in town, in Metropolis, and yeah, she is pulling some strings. Superman has to do some detective work, and Brian Bendis is a crime author, so this felt like a crime book, and it was super cool. I love the art by Patrick Gleason. I will stick with it. So those 2 were really good. Also really, really good. Some indie books, namely Long Lost Part 2, #1, and The Seeds, #1, and let's not forget the fantastic Psychoko. So thank you for watching. I know the big announcement is still coming up. I'm still preparing it because it's not easy. I have to tell you some things, and I have to ask you some things. So give me a little bit more time. I will be back with a graphic novel review next week. And as you can see, the content is coming now, and yeah, the rest in the announcement. Until then, have a good day. Bye bye.